Good morning. Glad each of you can be with us. Appreciate you starting your day. I'm not quite as nice as a cup of coffee, but hopefully I can get your morning going and started. Glad you could be here and appreciate you making the walk. It's the biggest convention center I think I've ever been in. So when I got this room this far down, I wasn't overly excited, but thrilled that each of you made the morning stroll to join me. My name is Tim Crabb. I'm a senior program manager on the user experience virtualization team. We are based in Utah and are an engineering team working on MDOT products. Today I hopefully can give you a little bit of an overview of UEV and help you understand how you can go home from this conference and start deploying and leveraging it in your enterprise. My goal and objective is simple. We want you to use the product and get high value out of it. It's very easy because this product is something you can get up and running literally in minutes and start seeing value immediately. Now, before we begin, I want to just make sure that everybody had a chance. If you're an MDOT customer, Terry's been handing out surveys on the way in. If you didn't get a survey and would like one, raise your hand. This is to give the product group feedback on what things are valuable in MDOT, what things you would like to see, and so forth. We're gathering that. So if you didn't get one of those, raise your hand and Terry will get you one. If you did, you can fill it out during the session, but if you're so focused and would like to listen, you can always just turn it into the folks down in the lab as well in our MDOT area, desktop virtualization and MDOT. All right, enough of my commercial announcement. Let me jump in and walk through the presentation today. First off, we talked a little bit about the session takeaways. Can we take the mic down just a little bit? It sounds like I'm a little reverb. I hope that's not scaring anybody out in the crowd. All right, so basically what we want to do is help you understand the deployment options for UEV. This is where I want you to be able to go back very quickly. So out of this session, hopefully that's one of the key takeaways. And then also how you can leverage your existing infrastructure. And UEV is very simple. It's a client-based architecture. Should be very easy for you to roll out in your enterprise. So let's give you a little bit of background and understanding of what UEV is and how it can work. I love the tagline, change the device and keep the experience. Now, if you think about that, how many of you use more than one device? Just think about how many you use in your daily world. And what's even crazier about that when I talk to people and say that, it used to be IT was kind of the exception. But today with bring your own device to work, whether you authorize it or not, people are doing it. And then you're also seeing many times people have a desktop and a laptop and now even a tablet. So how can we provide that best experience for them as they roam between devices? And I think there's a function in IT where we're able to provide them a good experience, but really the challenge for IT is how we can move that next level from just a good experience to a great experience and delight our customers by providing them a high level of service. The challenge is many of us don't have budgets and time to do that. So how do we figure that out? So UEV is a great way to do that. As we talk about this, the first one is, one of the pillars is personal and flexible. So this is where we take a look at things like application and OS settings. How can we get those to roam between devices? We want to make sure we preserve things like fast login times so we don't have the penalties of actually having to roam everything off the network and do huge, large file copies to get those down. And finally, don't force the user to have to reconfigure if they do have a machine that has to be retired, get a new machine. Can they just get everything back immediately? Do we have processes and policies in place to do that? The next level is make it simple and versatile. And this is where, when we take a look at UEV, we have kind of a surgical approach on how we can set this stuff out there and control it. So in IT, you're in charge of how you make this experience work for your users. We use a technology called settings location templates that we determine where those are in the network. That's what determines how things are updated. And those templates define which settings should roam and which applications should actually roam settings. So it's not a one-size-fit-all. It doesn't take everything and pull it down on the machine. You can pick and choose. Do I have just 5 or 10 applications that I care about? Think of those critical applications that the users, if they had to rebuild their machine, what would generate a help desk call? What would cause them pain? More importantly, again, if we're moving from good to great, not just what would cause them to call the help desk, but what would cause them to, tell your boss, great job, things are working awesome. That's a nice thing to get to. And finally, integrated and scalable. This is our third pillar, where we talk about we need to give you a tool that allows you to roll into your enterprise without having to reconfigure for us. And when I talked about the client-based architecture, it allows you to do just that. So you're able to take this and roll it into your enterprise and quickly be able to see high return without having to roll out databases, servers, tying these together in clusters and all these different things, and suddenly you become a UEV administrator. You don't have time and cycles to do that. We need to allow you to leverage things like Configuration Manager if you have it, Group Policy, and these other tools you've already got laid in, and a server infrastructure across your enterprise that you can just simply tell UEV to leverage that and use that for their settings, storage, and so forth. If we can do that, that gives you great value. And when we looked at how to lay out and build this product, that's what we tried to deliver in UEV 1.0. It'll be up to you as we present today to see if we did deliver on that value and if we do really give you the promise of those pillars. Now, I like this slide because it sets up the context of how does UEV fit in this grand world of user state virtualization inside of Microsoft. And when you think about this, Microsoft has a number of solutions already in this space, and I've tried to list them up here. Some of you are probably using roaming user profiles today. It's a very good solution and does some awesome things. In fact, if you look at this list, there's some things we've tried to mimic, but there's some that roaming user profiles still does that we can't. There's also a new technology called Microsoft Account Sync. This is in Windows 8, and this allows you to use your live account and synchronize settings using that live account. Well, that's a good technology too. So as you take a look at these things, you have to kind of determine what is going to fit for your enterprise. UEV is a very focused, granular solution that allows you to take application and OS settings that you define. It's not going to grab the whole world like roaming user profiles does, and that gives you some very specific things for it. In the Windows 8 world, Microsoft Account does things that UEV doesn't do today, which is synchronizes the Windows 8 apps. That's great value too. But again, you also have to have a Microsoft account. So you've got to kind of weigh these values as you look at what you want to roll out in your enterprise and which solutions for you. Hopefully today I'll give you some reasons to say UEV is compelling and may solve those issues that you have in your enterprise. If you're using one of these other technologies and they're solving your issues, fantastic. You'll walk out with an understanding of how UEV may help in the future or solve some other needs across your enterprise. Okay? All right. So when should you use UEV? That's kind of the grand question when we're talking to customers. I just showed you that slide of all those comparisons, and now you may be scratching your heads. This is kind of your place you start taking notes on when you should use it. The first part is when you want granular control. So one of the number one complaints when we've talked to customers when they're using a solution like roaming user profiles is it takes so long to log in. As I go between machines, it's got to copy down all that local profile and do that, and it slows me down. I don't want to have that happen. Well, with granular control, again, I talked about how we use settings location templates to allow you to selectively choose which applications and what settings in those applications roam. Because of that, that allows us to be very fast. And we access and actually pull information down, not at login every time. There's some specific information we'll pull down, but we actually do it on certain triggers. So one of the triggers we will use is login, but we actually, by default, scope out those settings that will slow down login. Those specific desktop OS settings. You can bring them back in if you want, but out of the box, we have eliminated those. And then you can actually enable those, and I'll show you that in our demos we walk through. The other one is we give you another trigger that applications are only synchronized when the application is launched or closed. We don't do any other application sync and grab it all in one. Okay, so that makes a big difference. Very good to get that granular control and allow you to roam those things that you'd like. Next one is a mixed desktop environment. And this is a pretty interesting world that you live in now because a desktop, that name has changed dramatically, right? It could be that thing sitting in the data center that a user remotes to. It can be that laptop they're carrying around. It could be that tablet. And then when you talk about the different methods and access and so forth, UEV doesn't care. Whether it's a traditional desktop or a virtual desktop, as long as we have the settings and a settings location template for it, we will go ahead and allow you to manage that. That gives you some real options and real opportunities to do this. One of the other cool things about this in a virtual world is we actually cross between a virtual desktop and a physical desktop. They can be mixed. So if I do have a laptop and I occasionally access a VDI pool, great. If I actually have multiple VDI hosts, multiple pools, you can actually roam between those pools as well. So we actually give you some really good solutions to deliver in that value. Wow, that chair's there. Almost went down. Next one, mixed application environments. If you're at our session yesterday, we talked a lot about how AppV is one of the cool ways to do this. And this allows you to mix an AppV application, a virtual application, with a physically installed application. so you can roam settings between those. And again, UEV doesn't differentiate, allows you to roll out in your enterprise how you want to deliver things, physically, virtually, and provide the settings management, again, to delight your users as needed. All right, so how does it all work? Every good presentation has to have an architecture slide, right? Okay, so we're at a technical conference, so this is our attempt. So what you have here is we have on the left our computer. Okay, so everything in that gray box on the left is our user's computer. And we have a set of applications. In this example, I'm listing Excel, IE, Outlook, very basic applications. And applications do some pretty standard things. They're going to store their settings in two places. Typically, it's going to be in the registry or the file system. So what UEV does is monitors those two areas, all right? So we're looking for settings in those two areas, and that helps us determine what we should synchronize. Now, with that, we need to determine what we're actually going to be monitoring. And so that's where we talk about this technology called settings location templates. These are XML files. They're pretty easy to understand when you look at them, and I'll show that in the demo. But what this gives us is the capability then to know which applications to monitor. Remember, I talked about that granular control, right? I could have hundreds of applications on a desktop installed, but UEV may only care about a handful of those, and those are defined by the settings location templates. So again, the three monitored applications in this example are Excel, IE, and Outlook. I have settings location templates for only those three. Anything else can run and do its thing, have a great time on the machine, but we're only going to look for those three apps. The next one is we have to define a settings storage location. And that's where all my settings are going to be stored, and this gives us the ability to roam. If I don't have a central location for a user to access their files, there's no way I can roam between devices. We're not even that good, okay? So you've got to have that defined somewhere on your enterprise. And we give you a couple of options. You can just leverage your user's Active Directory home directory, and so you can have that distributed across your enterprise. Or when you roll out UEV, you can say, you know what, I want it here on this server, and actually have one place for all those settings to be stored. It's up to you to decide, and I'll give you some methodologies here in a bit on how you can do that. But that's the settings storage location. Now, one of the things you'll notice about this is on my diagram there, under the sage storage location, I have a comment that says available offline. And one of the dependencies that we have in UEV is for offline files to be installed. So offline files has to be on there, and that actually allows us to use client-side caching. So if I have a laptop user that's connected, when they go off the network, we will actually continue to capture those settings. When they come back on the network, those settings then will be synchronized up. There's a question over here.
Is there only a single location that you can define the settings storage, or can you define by OU? Or can you define
Yeah. So the question was, is there only a single location that I can define? And the answer is no. The location is defined. Okay, our screen's still there. Our location is only defined on a per install basis. So I could define it by OU and based on the policy that I roll out. So it's up to you. One of the things I actually like, and we'll talk about this, is I like the concept of active user home directory. I haven't seen that broadly used when we've rolled out UEV, but the idea is it gives a great way to distribute it. But you could roll this out based on policy and how you manage that and actually have it on a per device, per user, per OU, per division basis, or site. Okay? So offline files is a really good thing, though, like I said when we were talking about that, because as I take that laptop off the network, I can go ahead and keep using it. When I come back on, those settings are there. Now, the next question when people ask about offline files, we're talking about it is, how do we decide what gets synchronized? It's a pretty simple model. It's the last writer wins. Okay? And we actually, when we built this, we talked about more complex ways to calculate this, algorithms, all those things, but it just became really confusing. So it is last writer wins. So if a laptop user goes off the network, they come back on, those settings are going to be updated. If they're running a VDI session simultaneously, so they were some race condition of which was changed last, it's the last writer wins. But there's an interesting behavior I'll tell you about settings, is settings don't change that much. They change typically the first time a user configures and sets up, but think of the last time you changed your settings in Word or Excel. Okay, you typically do that when you set it up, but it's not like every day you're going and changing settings. So when we talk about last writer wins, it's not quite as scary as it sounds, but it is something to be aware of when we talk about this. All right, So we talked about setting storage. The next one is number 4, triggers. And so what happens is the UEV agent is on that device. It's now got its settings location templates there registered, so it knows which applications to be watching for. And now there's a set of triggers that will tell it to collect and or apply the settings. And we talked about this before, that there's some basic triggers, log on and log off, lock and unlock. Those will actually enable all of the OS settings. Okay? By default, we've minimized those so they don't impact anything that is synchronous is disabled by default. You can actually go in and enable it, but synchronous settings would actually slow down login. Asynchronous settings are there. So like if you change your wallpaper, that's actually an asynchronous setting. We can apply that without impacting your login time. So that's there by default. The next set of triggers are when an application opens and closes. So when an application opens, we go to look to read settings. And when an application closes, we check to see if there's been any changes. And if there have, we'll then write those settings out. Okay? So that's how the triggers work, and that's how it ties together. Okay. So with that, now that I've given you kind of a logical layout map of how this works, we're going to give you a bit of a demonstration. Okay, let's see if I've got this right. Survey says I don't have it right. I just hit a couple buttons here. There we go. Got it right. Sorry to make you jump up. They've done a pretty good job of labeling, but my non-standard setup didn't have the right label. You just hit enough buttons, good things happen, right? Just push it harder. Okay, so what you have here is 2 machines side by side. I've got a Windows 7 machine, and I've got a Windows 8 machine. Now, the reason I did that is for one reason only, is to show you can roam settings between Windows 7 and Windows 8. I don't necessarily encourage users to do it, just because it's confusing, but for demo purposes, I did that for you today only to show you that it actually does work. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start over here on machine 1, and we're going to do just some very basic things. So you can see Windows 7 or Windows 8 over here, Windows 7 here. I'm going to start by going and locking this machine, and so we can go ahead and make some OS changes to start. So the first thing that I'm going to do, as most users, is I want to go ahead and change that desktop background. Right? This seems to be like the personalization that people want on their desktops. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to personalize it. Let's go grab our desktop backgrounds. I like to do something a little fancier because that's just what we do. And I'll come up here. I told you I'm from Utah, so I'm going to get the golden arch here, or the arches. And we'll go ahead and click OK. So there's my nice arch. Now, what I've done is I've personalized this. I've got it on here, but what haven't I done? I haven't initiated a trigger to capture that setting, right? So if I went over and logged on to the other machine, I'd still see the same flowers that I had before, okay? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and initiate a trigger. So do you remember what we said the triggers were? They were lock and unlock and log off and log on. So I can do any of those. So I'll just do a simple lock this computer, okay? So now I'll come over here to this device. We'll go ahead and log in. And what you'll see is that setting now changed. Now, the reason that happened after you saw that little ghosting, that fade, is that's an asynchronous setting. So we can bring Windows up, not block login, so we're really fast, and boom, immediately apply that. So that's kind of cool, right? I like that. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how OS triggers work and gives you an idea of how I can now have that personalized experience. So now I've got my great arch there on both devices. I feel a lot more comfortable as a user, right? That's kind of what we do. So now if I come in here, let's go ahead and take an application. Now here's Calculator. Somebody's obviously been on here doing programming, statistics, all these things. I'm going to just make this very basic, standard. We're going to go down here. We've had a great week down here. I'm going to go home and celebrate by leasing a new car. We'll put up our vehicle lease, right? I wish. So I've got that here. I've got this set. I can start my calculations, all these wonderful things here. But it's in my demo, so I don't have time, so I'll go ahead and close it right now. Now what's going to happen is, what were the triggers for our applications? They were on open and close of an application, right? So when I open that application, it checks to see if there's anything new. I made changes, and again, only if you make changes will we write settings out. We always monitor to see if there's changes, and then we'll write those out or not. So we'll come back over here, and I can leave this up if we're not going to do OS settings anymore. But if I launch Calculator now, it's going to, based on those triggers, it's going to go out and read those settings, and you can see it now has that same layout. Okay? So now let's take this and kind of show you what's really happening here on the back end to understand how this works. So I'm going to go here to my local app data folder. I don't need to yell it at you there. We'll do it in lowercase. Okay, and what we do here is under the Microsoft folder, under UEV, you'll see that we have our demo PC, which is the name of this. And this is all of the settings that I'm actually tracking right now. Okay? So we give you that capability. There's a set of default applications that UEV installs for. We'll walk through those in our presentation and give you that. But right now you can see that I'm tracking a fair bit of applications to work in. So we'll look up here. Calculator was the one that I just changed. So you can come in here and you'll see that I've got two settings inside. I've got current and initial. So what's happening is on my local machine, when I first capture settings for an application, I'll go out and I'll write initial settings. Okay? And I'll keep those, I'll just kind of bundle them up and just hold them on that machine. And that's kind of our safety watermark, if you will, of what settings were when UEV started. We really don't do anything with it after we get the initial. Then we actually create another directory called current. And current is where we are actually tracking what settings are applied. So what happens is UEV goes, and when an application starts up, it writes out to the network, or it goes out to the network, reads any files that have changed settings, pulls them down, compares them with what's in current, and if there has been a change, it will apply it. If there is no change, there's nothing to apply. And when it's going the other way, if it has changes, it'll write those out to the network and then write them to current. So it always tracks what's in current as your current settings. And these are basically a PKJX file. It puts your settings and your files in one bundle. If the files are larger, it'll actually create additional PKG files to actually track those. Okay? All right, so that's how that works. Then out on the network, let's go down here to my computer. Under the P drive, this is my user home directory that I'm using in this instance. And here is actually a hidden folder. I have obviously put visibility on this, but I tell you that so if you do use the user home directory, by default, they won't see this folder. Okay, by default, it's hidden, all is good, they're not going to be able to mess around. But if I come in this folder now, you can see that I have all of the things that I'm setting and synchronizing for. So I'm going to just go ahead and wipe these out just to kind of show this as part of the demo. And what we'll do is we'll come in here and we'll grab another application. Well, actually, I'll close that one. So I've just closed that, and you can see it went out and recreated Calculator immediately. Okay, so it's got that bundle of settings out there for Calculator, so I can go ahead and track those and see those going back and forth. If I launch another app, in this instance, I'll launch OneNote. Okay, and in OneNote, we're going to do some quick customization. We're just going to come in here, and where did it go? Right here. I'm going to go ahead and customize this. We'll go ahead and add formatting buttons back. So I've got my nice formatting here. Now I'll go ahead and close this, and you'll see out here that OneNote should show up as well. Okay? All right, there you go. So I've got OneNote. Now, I'll talk about this in a bit, but our Office templates are a little more complex than our standard templates, but you'll see here it actually copied out two of them, Office Common and OneNote itself. So just kind of tuck that in the back of your mind and say, Tim will cover it later. But again, over here, if I launch OneNote, you'll actually see that the formatting has come across and shown up over here as well. All right? So we've talked about a number of things in here. We've talked about triggers. We've talked about synchronization between devices. We've talked about the applications. We've talked about OS settings versus application settings, and we've talked about settings, location, store. All right, so that gives you hopefully a good overview of UEV from that aspect of and how it kind of works together to deliver those solutions. All right, so with that, let's drill forward here. Okay, so we wanted to talk about deployment and help you guys understand how to deploy this. So with this, I've put together, I'll call it a four-part methodology of how you need to configure and roll out UEV in your enterprises. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through each of these sessions, Again, this is where hopefully you guys are going, wow, this is so easy at the end of this, I can go home and roll this out, or at least start piloting this very quickly. I can promise you, and when you see this roll out, you can literally roll a pilot in 10 minutes and start going on this. So it's very, very cool that way. So let's start in our first section, configuring settings location store, or storage location. Okay, first thing to note on this is in that demonstration I just gave you is there was no server component. UEV doesn't include a server component. All it needs is an SMB share. Okay? It's just looking to put that out there. Now, again, you can use two options, either the active home directory, where it's pointing to an SMB share, or you can actually create a setting storage share. Now, if you're going to create a setting storage share, or if you're wondering about the impact of what this is on your network, you're going to see about 5 meg per user per average on package size. Settings are pretty small. Typically, and you'll see this vary as you look at these, but they're very small. So if you're tracking 5 applications, multiply it by 5, and you're in good shape. You can use DFS replication, but it has to be, I think it's DFSR. Do you remember, Nathan? Is that right, Nathan? Yeah. We have on our support website, we have a technical information document on that, but I'm pretty sure it's DFSR. All right, so again, we talked about those things. Active Directory, home directory, or go and create your own share. Now, if you're going to create your setting storage share, just like you want to maybe centralize this, a couple things you need to note is you're going to need to make sure that the users have rights because they're writing out there as the user. It's not going to be some special service and all these fancy things. We're literally using the user's rights to do that. So you're going to need to grant rights to them. And then there's some tricks to make sure that you don't want people just going out there and browsing everybody's settings. You saw they're obfuscated a bit. It's a PKJX file. Most settings aren't storing security information, but you do want to typically lock this down so you don't have that. So what I've done is I've given some instructions here. I'm not going to walk through all this on how to configure this with NTFS permissions and how you can take this and actually go and configure it. Now, I've just put some highlights on this slide, but you'll see there on the bottom, there's a link that points you to the whole technical information document that tells you how to do this in our documentation. So I encourage you to do this. But suffice to say, if you follow these steps, you can create that central share, and it will dynamically create a storage location for each user that they will only have rights to. Okay? So very, very cool. The agent will actually do that, secure their folder, and create their directory, and allow that to work. Okay. Pretty simple in the storage location. Next one is configuring the UEV agent. And this goes back to the question we had over here early on, which is how do I roll this out across my enterprise? Do I have to have one location or more? So as you look at this, the agent is an EXE or an MSI, very easy to roll out. The EXE is, determines the bitness, it's graphical, wonderful, all those good things. You can run silent commands on it, all those things, we'll pass them through the MSI, or you can just run the MSI. Just depends on what you want in your enterprise. If you're going home and piloting this, go ahead and run the EXE. Very simple, it's a nice GUI. My team worked very hard on the GUI, but for most of the time when you're rolling this out with users, you're going to just roll it silently. They'll never see it. Super easy to do. Standard MSI command /quiet, and I'll give you some examples here in a moment. You can configure it via command line, GPO, or config manager. And again, one of the reasons we still get this request, we still have customers rolling stuff with MSI via GPO. I don't know if we have anybody in here do it. You don't have to raise your hand. But if you do, that's great. We do have the MSI for you to do it. And you'll need to, again, specify how you want this to install. The most common mistake that people make is they'll go ahead and run the installer, and they will not tell it where the setting storage location is. So what will UEV do? Absolutely nothing. So they'll pull up their two machines, they'll be clicking on apps, trying to get them to sync, but it doesn't know where to read centrally from or to write to, so UEV won't work. So I'll give you some examples of how you need to specify that when you roll this out. Because it will install, and it will do that for a reason. We actually will also talk about dormant states and how you want to roll this in images. Okay, the other thing is we do a prereq check for offline files. And that's that client-side caching so we can actually do the roaming with the laptop. You need to make sure that that's in place. The other dependencies are listed out there for .NET. Please make sure that you meet those requirements. Again, the install will fail otherwise if you don't meet offline files or this. And then you will require a reboot. That is required for OS settings. All right, so let's show some examples. Okay, this is the fun part, command line options you love. Standard deployment. Default templates, AD home directory. Just go ahead and run it like this. You don't have to do anything. And that's great, but like I said, if you're in a lab environment and I don't have AD home directory defined, you'll get frustrated very quick because you're going to be clicking on this trying to sync settings and nothing will happen. Okay? So you're going to want to make sure that you do this next one, which is actually put a setting storage path in there. Okay? And what this will do is, in this instance, I'm pointing out to a central file share. I'm putting it on a per user basis, so I'll have my own timcrab directory. I'm going to install it quietly. The user won't see anything. I can push this via config manager or some other tool out there that you may have, and it will just install and be there. Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. Takes, I don't know, 10, 20 seconds. Pretty easy to install. We'll show you how that looks here. And then the next one is a VDI deployment. Okay? So now this one, in this example, I'm assuming that you have an AD home directory defined for your users. That's why I didn't put a setting storage path. I also am using sync method equals none. And what this does is, in a VDI environment, it makes absolutely no sense to have offline files. So if I pass this parameter, it will allow me to go ahead and install without the dependency for offline files. But please, please, please only use this if you are in a VDI environment and will always be connected. You technically can install on a laptop like this, but then if you disconnect the laptop from the network, what's going to happen? None of your settings will be captured. It'll just be done. So use sparingly, but we did want to give you that as an example of how to do that. This one was interesting when we talked to our TAP and beta customers early on. They came back and said, UEV, love it. I want to put in my default image, but I want to put it in a dormant state. And I kind of alluded to this. This would mean that you could go ahead and allow it and configure it. I could put setting storage path. I could do all those things. But what I want to do is just turn sync off. So what I'm going to do is, let's say I have my golden image I'm going to roll out across my enterprise. And in that golden image, I want to make sure UEV is baked in. If UEV is baked into that image, I may want to then roll that out and turn on, based on group policy, where they should be syncing, their setting storage path, and then also whether they should enable sync or not. So this is a great way to allow you to get this in your golden image, but then only enable it on a department, division, or even individual basis as needed. Okay? So kind of a cool option. Basically says go to sleep. Okay, yeah, question.
Where are these settings stored? Are they only stored when you install it?
We'll show this in the management section, but it can be configured via group policy, it can be configured via configuration manager, and it can be configured via PowerShell. So if you want to roll it in any of those states and then add parameters later, you can. Yeah. See, you're a perfect plant. Thank you for the question. I like it when I have the answers. Okay, the next one we want to talk about is, how do I create these settings location templates? Okay, this is one of the important parts of this, because one of the things that we know as a company is, I'm not going to know every application you need to synchronize settings for. Now, we've picked a default set. I'll show you what those are, but you'll need to add more. So what do we have? Templates are simple. They describe what's in the registry or the file system and how to grab those. Okay? Those are the areas we're looking for. They're simply XML formatted documents, and they have some basic information. Things like application name. It's going to have a unique ID dynamically assigned to it, so it has to be unique in the enterprise. We're going to have the process, version ID, location, whether you should capture and apply, all those different things. So you'll see that actually in there. And there's 3 types that we offer. First one is inbox. And these are the ones that we include for you by default with the install. When I go ahead and install the agent, we're going to give you a library, if you will, of templates. And we did that so you're immediately able to see value. Now, granted, I know you've all been dying to roam calculator. We've tried to add some more value than just that, but that was one of the ones we threw in for free. Next one, custom. This is where you're going to build your own, and I'll show you the tool to do that. But you're going to be able to go in and take any of your applications in your enterprise, run generator, the UEV generator, and we'll demonstrate this in a moment, and capture those settings to create them for your enterprise. And then finally, if you create something, share it. This is the community approach. So what this does is our templates don't actually deliver any of the bits, so you're not breaking any copyright restrictions or anything like that. But if you've done something that is valuable and actually you think other companies use it, I know I've talked to a number of education customers and other customers that are doing this, wonderful way to help the community out. So if you do a template, share it. And we already have about 45 different templates up there that people have built and shared in the community. Okay? So actually kind of a cool thing. So let's walk through a couple of examples. So what is Inbox? So applications, we've try to get the heavy hitters, the ones that we work with. Office 2010 and 2007 are the two biggest ones we have. Browser, IE8, IE9, and IE10. And then also, again, I told you Windows accessories. These were ones we tested with early on and just included. They're fun. It's great to show the loan calculator to your boss. They'll get a kick out of it. All right, Windows settings. We do desktop settings. Start menu, taskbar, folder, region, language, ease of access. And then the other one is themes, and that is where we actually do the wallpaper. Interesting note on this, and in case I forget to tell you this later, the desktop settings are synchronous, so those have to take effect at log in and log off only. So by default, those are disabled. Okay? They're installed, but they're disabled. So if you really want to have those settings, you need to go in and enable that, and we'll walk through and show you that. If I forget, somebody remind me. But I've got that in my notes. Okay. How do templates work? The Microsoft User Experience Virtualization Generator is the tool that we run to do this. If you're familiar with AppV, it behaves very similar to the sequencer, where we actually profile an application and look at, in this instance, what settings it's reading and writing to, and then we will capture those, create the XML file, and then that XML file is simply registered with the UEV agent. And that registration is what tells us which EXE to monitor. Is it the right version? Is it the right app? Those kind of things. And at that point, we'll inject and watch that and look for settings being written and read that we can apply to. Okay? All right. What's a template look like? I hope that's okay in back. I tried to check that, so hopefully it's big enough for you to see. This is actually a template that we've taken. You can see in the top, very simple, we have the name of the app. In this example, Acrobat 10. You can see we also have a version, so you can version these as you go along there, but it makes it very simple. And they can go across versions of an app. So here is the EXE we're actually monitoring. And here you'll see the versions. And in this instance, we've locked it down pretty tight, the major and minor version, 10.1. And we've locked it at the other end at 10.1. But you can create ones that go across. So, for example, calculator. We didn't spend the time to create an individual calculator template for each version of calculator. We basically said the settings haven't changed from calculator, I don't know if it's 6 to 8 or however it goes. But we've adjusted those in here. All right? But that gives you an idea. Depending on your application, you may never have to have multiple versions. If you do, you can do that. And that's why we have Office 2010, Office 2007. Settings change between those. We've got specific version controls. Next one is what you're actually looking for. So this example of the registry settings. And here you see we're saying go to this location in the registry, and we've said it's recursive. So grab everything underneath it. Okay? The way the generator works is typically it's looking for that. It's looking for registry entries and files, and will grab everything under a given path. Okay? That works really well about 98 to 99% of the time. Sometimes there are specific apps that have very specific requirements in certain areas. And I'll give you an example is in the Office templates, what we found was there were times that they had specific subkeys that were version specific either to 64-bit architecture or 32-bit architecture, and we wanted to make sure that we were very reliable in those templates. So if you were to open the calculator template, it would look very much similar to this. Very simple, path recursive, all those things. If you open the Office templates, you'll see there is a bunch of entries for very specific registry keys. And we've been very specific in what we've grabbed in there because those are actually architecture specific because we found there's some differences between Office on 64-bit, Office 32-bit. And we've done that work for you so you don't have to. Again, those are the rare occurrences, but Office is this big, and the majority of applications you'll be running are probably going to be much smaller. So we've hopefully given you and done the heavy lifting for you there. But again, you'll see that is for the registry, and then again, same example for files. Again, we're going to one specific location and grabbing those settings. Okay? All right. So, Tim, this looks really easy. I could do that, right? Open that up in Notepad and go. Well, you can to a certain extent, but there's a couple things I'm going to give you a warning on. Okay? One of the things that we get feedback on is I've looked in the Office templates, and there's some things you're doing in there that aren't documented. We're working on that. We're working on getting those officially documented. The majority of apps that you're going to have in your enterprise really can be run through Generator. Don't open the Office template and feel like I've got to be the coding wizard and do everything just like those. Run it in the Generator first, see if it doesn't work, and as I said, 98 to 99, probably even almost 100% of the time you're going to be just fine. But if you do want to go in and customize these things, it's XML. It's not hard to do. But we want you to make sure you validate against it the XSD. And I'll show you this in the Generator. You can actually go in and validate any templates you make. And that way you're not going to have issues when you import those, register them, and do those things. We'll do that. There's some interesting ones, though, that you can add if you need. And I've talked to a couple customers that have gotten this far already with UEV that have looked in the Office templates and are doing this. One is registry and file exclusions. Kind of interesting. So you can say, don't even look in this area. So I can say path recursive, but then exclude this one. Okay. Next one, architecture separation. We talked about that. I think in Office there was something in one of the Outlook settings that was architecture specific that we had to break out, and that's why we have a 64-bit and a 32-bit version. Shell process designation, how you want to interact there. And then file and registry paths for known folders and registry values. That's where we said we're going to be very prescriptive in what we do there. Now, the other thing that I'll give a point on this is people also have asked, Tim, can I go in and customize the OS templates? The OS templates are technically templates, but there's a lot of interaction and testing that we had to do internally. I strongly recommend to not do the OS templates. Leave those as they are. If you do anything outside of that, we won't be able to offer support. We'd be able to give you some guidance. But I've had customers say, Tim, I would really like to roam desktop shortcuts, for example. Technically, we could do that. But in our testing, and this is one of the issues we have, is to roam shortcuts, you have a problem in the sense that shortcuts require an application behind it. So I could roam the shortcuts, but then they may appear broken if that application is installed on that device. So we purposefully eliminated that to make sure you had a consistent experience as you went between machines. Okay? So it just gives you kind of an example of how these things work. And we're taking feedback, trying to make adjustments, but anyhow, that's one example for you. Right here, sir.
On the section where you talk about file paths for known folders and registry values, can you use environment variables in the templates so you don't have to hard code a path? You know, my company, we use some specific enterprise-specific variables.
Yes, I believe you can, right, Nathan? Yeah. So I have Nathan's my backup here, so yes, you can. All right. Good question. Good question. The question was, I'll just repeat it and make sure it gets on the tape. The question was, can I use variables inside the templates? The answer is yes. Okay. So enough talk. Let's go back into demo mode and show how this works. Okay, I'm going to just minimize that guy for a minute. Okay, so what I'm going to do is over here on the Windows 8 machine, I'm going to go ahead and launch UEV Generator. So let's come in here. I'll just type Generator. It installs as a separate application. Very easy to run. Comes up, and you'll see it it's very similar, if you're familiar with that, to what the sequencer looks like. It behaves very similarly. I'll say I can create a template, I can edit, or I can validate, and we'll walk through each of those. And then again, we've got some nice links over here for you to get access to as well. We'll go ahead and create a template. So we'll browse to the file path of where this is. Now, one of the things to note on this is it looks for an exe or a shortcut file. And apparently my machine is really tired. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to go grab a shortcut file that I put on the desktop. I'm going to do OneNote for us, just as an example. And I'll go ahead and hit Next, and we'll launch. Now what it does, it goes in the background, launches the application. Now what I tell users when they're doing this, a couple things to note. One, this doesn't have to be a pristine machine. In fact, we typically want to have a machine that may have been used multiple times with applications. And the reason is sometimes settings come in over time, and we want to make sure that when the application opens, we're monitoring all of the read locations. And when the application closes, we try to monitor all the write locations. Okay? And 9 times out of 10, you can just open and close the app, and you'll get all of the settings. But you may want to go through, and if there's a specific setting that you're trying to capture, go through and change that setting. And what that's going to do is that's going to force the application to write that setting out, and the generator will actually capture that. Again, most of the time, they're just like we showed in that other template, they're recursive, and it's not an issue. But we just give you that as kind of a heads up. Okay, so I'm in OneNote. I could go through and make the changes I wanted, but in this instance, I'm just going to go ahead and close it, because I know what it's going to do. And it's going to go through and discover the settings location. So again, it's watching how the application works, it's profiling it, doing all that good stuff, and it's going to churn this out on the back end. Okay, so we'll give it a second here. Okay, complete. Everybody loves a green checkbox, always a nice thing. Okay, we'll say okay. Now, here you'll see that we have a summary of what it's discovered. I have a set of registry entries, and I have a set of file entries. And I have them broken into buckets of standard and non-standard. Now, let me talk about these. So what we did is when we looked at applications, we found that there are multiple ways you can read and write settings to applications, some outright evil. So writing settings outside of the local user profile to C:\/ somewhere, that's evil. We won't catch that. We're only looking in the user profile directories. And then we also are looking for how we behave in those profile directories. Are we doing things that are non-standard? So if it's not in the local user profile directories, we won't even show it in here. If it's in those directories, we'll actually go through and try to make our best guesstimate of what is standard and what is good behavior and non-standard and not as good behavior. So in here, you'll see I've come in and I've grabbed this, and I'm saying all settings and subkeys, and in non-standard, I have a bunch of these as well. Now, one of the reasons I picked this is I wanted to show you, have this conversation with you. When you're looking at an application, think about how that application behaves. And I wanted to do Office because in this instance, I could create a OneNote template, and I could put it out there. But you remember in my first demo, I showed you when I launched OneNote, what did it do? How many settings did it write out? It wrote out one for OneNote and one for Office Common. Okay. So when we were building our templates initially, we found that we would roll out templates like for Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and I'd go in and I'd change something in Word, and then I'd go in Excel, and that setting would have changed. And the reason is because Office, and this is a good thing, I'm not slamming Office on this, they use common settings between multiple applications. All right? So just be aware of how your apps integrate, because you could see some unique behavior like that if you are using a suited app, if you will, if it is using common locations. And that's why we actually created our common Office template, which houses all of the settings that are common between them, like background colors and those kind of things. And then we have specific templates for individuals. So I'm not going to publish this one, but I wanted to give you that example of that. So this one, I have one specific setting here. If I was going to create this one just for OneNote, I may consider just grabbing that one, actually those two. The non-standard are going to be the same way. But again, the good news is we provide you a OneNote template, so you don't have to do this. And then here, again, a preferences.dat file, and that's probably pretty important, so we'll keep that in standard. But if you look in non-standard, some of these probably not as required. And again, most of them are in common. So I could go in and investigate them and determine if I want them or not. But I'll just go ahead and say next for purpose of the demo. And here you'll see that I can put some metadata in here. If you are going to share the template, you may want to include or not include, depending on how you want to position this, your information in here, template author name, template email, and then, of course, the versions you want it to run and so forth. And I'll go ahead and hit create. So what this will do, we'll put this on my desktop, and we'll go ahead and hit close. And then what you should see here is my OneNote template. We'll go ahead and open it with Notepad. I love the VM world. I'm getting slower, apparently. There we go. Okay, so there is Notepad, and you can see here's the template I created. I've got the versioning, got the file name that I'm monitoring, and so forth. So there's your template. Okay? All right. Let's move forward. Okay, so now our next one is, as we've gone through and created the templates, how do I get those things out across my enterprise? Okay? And that's where we're going to talk about deploying and manage UAV in general. And so when we talk about management, there's a couple of things to hit. First of all, whoa, did I skip one here? Let me go back. Okay. We'll talk about managing the templates. So catalogs are how I do this. Technically, well, actually I've got a couple ways, but the easiest way is catalogs. We'll talk about catalogs first. So catalogs allow me to define a location on the network that all of my agents will monitor to see if there's any new catalogs. So what we've done is we've created a scheduled task that once a day, it launches at 2 a.m. in the morning. It goes out and checks this location to see if there's any new templates that it needs. And if it does, it'll copy those templates down, register them, and start monitoring for that application. Okay? So it allows me to have one location I centrally distribute and manage this. Now, if I want to have multiple across the enterprise, that's fine. The catalog locations can be controlled via group policy, via config manager, and via PowerShell. So I can determine where I put that and how I get it there. And again, very easy to do. Catalog considerations are you want to use it for custom templates and be able to put those in. By default, all of the inbox templates are automatically registered. If you want to use the catalog as the authoritative source, there's a command line option that will disable the auto-registering of the templates when the agent is installed. And what that will give you is the ability to use the catalog as your authoritative source for all templates. So what you would do is then be able to put everything in there, go ahead and have it push it out. But your UAV agent would do nothing until it got that first update from the catalog. So just be aware of that. So it's a good way to do it, but it's just something to be aware of.
Can you customize the run my anytime window?
You can. It's a group policy, so you can just modify that. Or pardon me, it's a scheduled task. So you can actually do some kung fu to do it via group policy. But it is able to do that. The one thing that we've run into an issue with that, since you asked about this, was if you're using this in a VDI farm, where it's using, for example, mandatory profiles, it will never update because it keeps resetting it back. So you need to just be aware of that and edit that policy to run at startup or something like that in those instances if you're using VDI. So just kind of a heads up on that one. All right, let's talk about general management principles. I've alluded to these as we've gone through the presentation. We'll just call these out for a few minutes. Group policy, configuration pack, and PowerShell commandlets. This is really the heart and soul of how I manage the enterprise and get this out. So once you've deployed all of this out there, now how do you live with it and make sure it gets configured the way that you want? So let's start with group policy. Group policy provides some great value because we've delivered this as a separate ADMX template. You can go up and download it. It's not in the box, but it includes all of those settings that you see there. So if you think about how we've rolled out the agent, if you roll it out in a dormant state, this is a great way to, again, apply very specific fixes, configuration items that you would like. For example, things like setting storage path. Again, if I want to configure that on a per departmental basis, I can do that using this. If If I want to have specific catalogs for different departments or divisions or locations, I can do that. All those are available to you there. And it allows you, again, to define how you want to tie those in across your enterprise on each of these. Now, when we look at, see that transition? Okay, sorry. Configuration pack for UEV. It has the same items, so if you're using Config Manager 2012, you can actually take these same things and not be dependent upon group policy. You can push this out. The nice thing about that is you can get that quickly across your enterprise. The one gotcha on this is it does remediation, but you have to modify one script. So for example, the setting storage path, if that is going to be how you roll this out, you need to make sure that you actually tell it what it should remediate to. Otherwise, in group policy and config manager rather, you can actually run the report. It'll tell you if it's compliant or not, but then not be able to reset it. Okay? So I encourage you to do that. And then finally, PowerShell and WMI. Everything we do in this product via those other tools is all tied through WMI. So it's very easy to see all these same settings. All the tasks can all be performed in there. I'll actually give you some demos of how you can do this and troubleshoot with it and allow you to set it up. Yeah? No, right now the question was, are we doing SIM, and we're only using WMI right now. All right, so with that, a couple things just to close on this, and then I'll demo some of this to let you see how this works. Order of precedence of settings. Whether it's group policy or the configuration manager or PowerShell, we apply these in this settings, computer targeted and user targeted. Computer will always override user. You can apply user and then a computer. The one thing that I will tell you that's different on this is templates will only work in the computer targeted settings. So if I'm setting a catalog storage path, I can't set that on a per user basis, because when I install templates, templates are installed to the machine, and then I can actually control via the user what they actually do. So I'll show you how that works and a couple of things to do that, but this is kind of a reference slide for you to hit. So with that, let's dive into the management demo and show you some of this. Okay, let's switch back over here. Okay, so in the management side, let me just hit a couple of things here on this. So the ADMX template, it's available as a download on the public site, so you can actually go up to download.microsoft.com and download it. It just simply installs, very simple and easy to do, and it puts it inside the directory. Turned off. That's never a good thing. Okay, I'll let that come back up while we're doing this. So you download it, install it, it'll actually put it in the local policy directory, make that available to start going and using the group policy editor, apply it to GPOs and so forth. Config pack setup, very similar. Again, it's just a simple setup, goes ahead and launches, gives you the cab file that you can go ahead and import for the baseline and go ahead and run it there. Makes it easy to go ahead and leverage, simple to do. And you'll see we have a 64 and a x86 build. And let's hope this comes back up so I can actually show you some of the other things. While that's doing that, let's jump over to one of the clients and I'll show you some of the PowerShell. Okay, everything that I said in the product can be viewed in PowerShell. Okay. All right. So the first thing you need to do is actually import the module, which is UEV. And then I actually have a host of commands that I can run. The first one I'm going to run is UEV configuration. And this just shows me some of the basics of what I'm running. And I hope you can see that. I hope it's not too small there. You can see that I can do things, my sync enabled method. My sync method is none. I'm actually writing directly to the store for this demo to make sure things are syncing across. I have a storage location. I have all those things immediately available to me there. One of the things you can also do is take and export that and take this configuration to another machine. Makes that very easy. But one of the ones I like to do is show what is registered on here. So if I say get UEV template, It'll give me a nice list of all my templates. But rather than do it as that, I like to put in a little formatted table. Let's do table. Okay, so you can get a nice formatted table to list all of the different templates that you're using. So you can kind of see how those come out. I can see the template version, the template ID, and whether it's enabled or not. Okay, gives me kind of those different options. And then, as I said, any of the controls in here you can do, from registering a template to doing different devices. It makes it very easy to pull through in this. But what I want to do is jump over into the server and just show you what the group policy looks like on this end. So let's go here. So you'll notice over here that I have a couple of applications that are not enabled. So desktop settings and ease of access settings, those are both false. Remember I said up front that there's some desktop settings that we don't enable by default so they don't block login. Those are the two that are disabled by default. Okay, they're installed and registered, but you'd have to go through and re-enable them via group policy, PowerShell, or whatever if you wanted them. But if you look up here, I've got two others. Access and Word have been disabled. Okay, so let's jump over here onto the server. And what you'll see here is I'll launch my, not my user. Let's go into group policy here. And what I've done is on this server, I've gone through and run that installer. And so it's actually put the policy in, and I've created a GPO. Okay, so let's go look here. There's my GPO for UEV. And I'm going to come in here, I'm going to edit it. And you'll see that I have, oops, let's not go under preferences. Let's go under policies. And we'll go to Windows Components. We'll scroll down to Microsoft User Experience. Okay, so here's those settings that we've been tracking before, right? We've showed these. And again, we've got some nice help in here to kind of tell you what they are if you're going through trying to understand the settings. And again, these are the same basic ones if you want to use Configuration Manager, the DCM. The difference is with the DCM, it'll enforce these via script. And again, you have remediation capabilities in there, which is kind of cool as well. So you get very much the same functionality. But here, as I click in Applications, what you'll see is I have disabled via group policy those two applications. And that's why those do not show up in my list. And if I want to go through and change others, wait for the policy to refresh, I could do that. I can also enable it. But that's why those two are set up in that way. Okay? All right, so there's your group policy extensions. We've talked about config pack, and we've talked about PowerShell. Okay, so with that, let's jump back in. I wanted to include some PowerShell examples on here. We have some in our documentation, but basically I wanted to give you some quick ways that you could get up and running and work with this. So this is kind of a PowerShell cheat sheet that we included that has some of the basic commands in here that you can pull up and see all of those when you go back to play with UEV. Okay? All right. So we've about come to the end, and I just wanted to walk through, again, hopefully you understand now a lot more of how UEV works and interacts with your environment. It is a tool that you can use to very quickly deploy, manage, and configure and take settings to a new level, to not just meet what people want as far as basic expectations, but truly delight your users by allowing them to take their settings between devices, but also keep their experience. So with that, that wraps up our session. Let's go ahead and conclude by just giving a quick reminder that there's other sessions going on this week that you can take a look at. MDOP has a number of out there that have already happened. There's a couple other AppV sessions today and tomorrow I'd encourage you to go to if you're looking for details on that. Here's the window track resources, and of course more information links. And finally, the other links. Encourage you to please fill out a survey. If you took one of the surveys from Terry, he'll be in back taking those, or again, you can take to those to the lab. And again, please give me feedback on the session so we can provide that in future sessions on how it goes. Hopefully you'll have a chance to win. And with that, we'll open it up for questions. If you want to go to a mic, great. Otherwise, I'll try to repeat the question so you can hear. Let's start over here. There's a question over here, and then I'll come to that mic. Is there a limit to the number of templates you can have in the catalog? I'm not aware of one. No limit? Yeah, so there's no limit that we've hit, at least. The question is just how many apps you're monitoring, but we look for when the app is launched. We're not really blocking, so it shouldn't be an issue. Over here, sir.
Do you or will you support VMware ThinApp applications?
What was that? Which application?
VMware ThinApp.
Oh, VMware ThinApp.
Instead of AppV.
We've not done any testing with that, so I won't give you a support statement on it. You could test it. It depends on how they've layered their virtual application. The one thing we do know on virtual applications on our AppV apps is you need to run generator on the physical installed MSI app, and then we'll actually roam settings to the AppV app. So I'd have you try that with ThinApp. It may work. It just depends on how they've layered their virtualization. Okay, over here, sir.
Just wondering when Office 2013 would be included in the templates.
I didn't call that one out, but Office 2013, because Office 365 provides setting roaming, we don't have that as a solution. So we allow you to use the built-in Office 365 settings roaming, and we're not currently offering that. Okay?
So will the 365 settings roam to 13 local install?
365 settings require you to use the 365 infrastructure. So I take it you would like us to provide a 2013 template. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. I think I got the feedback. I've got a couple others from my team. That's good feedback. So I appreciate that. Okay, over here.
How is it licensed for RDS?
How is it licensed on RDS? Okay, so on RDS, basically MDOP is licensed through SA per user, so you should be fine running it through RDS or locally. So as long as you have a license for MDOP for those running it through RDS, you're fine. It's not licensed like AppV, though, where you get a free license. There's not free, but how AppV does their licensing, we're different.
I think I know the answer, but can you roam settings across multiple versions of an app? And the example is I have Outlook 2013 on this, 2010 on my desktop. Sometime I log into a conference room that's got 2007. It'd be cool if I could have my settings roam across those versions.
Yeah, what's nice is you can do that, but it's going to depend on the app. So just the template, it's not a limitation in our technology, it's a limitation in how the app's implemented. So Office is a great example. Settings have changed between 2007 and 2010, and that's why we don't have just one Office template that does those things. Calculator, though, as I said, very simple app, it doesn't care. So it's really, as you look at this, for your custom apps, I'd say look at the applications, so they don't change, you're fine. So just you'll have to kind of test and see. Okay? Over here.
How in the Office side are add-ins, especially licensed products that require add-ins to be inserted? Some PCs will have them installed, some won't. How will it manage that part of it? So there's an Excel, I launch it on one PC that is licensed for it, has the add-in. Will it retain those settings if I go to a PC that does not have it?
It will, if the add-in is truly writing those and is acting as under those directories where those settings are stored, we will capture it. We're not validating anything to where, well, let me see what I say. So if I launch Excel and it has in the template, a set of locations in the registry and in the file system, I'm not really monitoring or caring what reads or what puts information in there, right? I'll only monitor excel.exe when it opens and closes as to whether I'll read and write from there. But if you have a plugin, if it's right in those areas, we will capture that information. And if it roams to another machine that doesn't have that, well, there's just no settings that it's going to read from it. So it's going to depend on a plug-in basis on how they behave. If they're writing to their own subdirectories, you would need to go in and modify that template or provide a method for that. And I've actually had a couple of customers that have gone in and given us feedback on the Office template where they've had to go in and add another one because of that very reason. So I don't know if you're working in the legal vertical. It was a legal vertical that had a specific plug-in that they had to do that with.
I'm in the financial space. And
so yeah, you may be in a similar situation. So look at where that plug-in is working And then you may have to do some kung fu there to get that in if that's the case. If it's outside of that directory. If it's written under there, you're okay.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Over here.
Tim, I'd like to understand a little bit more about the underlying mechanics about how settings are actually being copied or transferred. So, for example, some other UAV apps or UEV apps do file redirection or registry redirection. Is UEV the same way?
Well, all UEV is doing is it's looking and just, I mean, it's almost too simple in some ways because, like I said, think of when an app starts and an app closes, there's a state and time, we take a snapshot and we move it.
So
We
does
just
it actually
copy it.
copy it from the current user?
Yes.
Okay.
So we take it right from current user, we look at that information and pull it through. And that goes back to the local app profile and then also the HKCU. And I don't know that we grab anything from machine. It's only going to be the local user profile, which will limit you to HKCU.
I got one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you ever run into challenges where apps don't close properly, something like Link?
Well, I would never say that Link doesn't close properly.
Or
But,
it doesn't close until log off or something like that?
you know, in those instances, well, so let me take the question just a little differently. Basically, we run into this issue of a long-running app. And Link's probably a great example. A user thinks they've closed it, but it's sitting down there in the system tray. Outlook is another example. People just don't close it. I'm never going to close it, right? Because that's your life. At least that's the life of a program manager. So I live in a lot of that. So now what happens is that application will never write settings out. Most apps really don't write settings out until those get closed. So you have to train your users that if they roam between devices, they're either going to have to close that app at least once to capture the settings or log off. Because when I log off, those settings should capture. There has been a bug logged. I'll give you this, though, that if I never close an app and I always log off and have it close the apps, there are occasions that we can't capture those settings because the desktop basically rips the rug out from underneath us before we can capture them. So you need to have your users at least close the app manually once if it persists and is a problem. But like I said, a lot of times you'll be able to capture those. Okay, over here.
You mentioned that it doesn't pick up like anything written to the root of C, things like that, you know, non-standard or locations that aren't liked. If we run an app that does write to that, and it's not writing to the user directory, will the generator pick that up, or would we have to write a custom XML for that? Or would you recommend maybe we store those settings when we install the app instead?
Well, where you're going to run into the problem is going to be that, I'm talking in the ideal world, is you want to have users not be admins on their machines. So in theory, they wouldn't be able to even write to that because UEV is not writing or reading as a service. They're writing and reading as the user. So the user wouldn't have access to that anyway. So that's where you get into the kung fu of looking at these, that if you've got bad apps doing that, you need to figure out how you can get them in a healthier state. Okay? So there's no easy way around that. Yeah?
When you open and close applications and it writes the configuration files, approximately how big are those configuration files? Like, I would just be concerned that if, like, I have like 30 applications and the user customizes like every application, it may take up their user space.
Yeah, I think I had it on one of the slides. It's approximately about 5 meg per app, and that's probably on the higher side. I'll say this: Office is a lot bigger than Calculator. It just depends on the size of the settings. So you'll have to kind of take a look. But when we did this for the presentation, we went out and we said it's about 5 meg per app at most. And that's probably really generous. Like I said, it just depends on the kind of apps, how many you're tracking. Can you fill up a lot? Yes. But again, remember, UEV is only settings. It's not the data for the app. And that's where the users would get in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
It really depends on the type of settings that you're capturing. If it's file settings, then of course that's going to hold a lot bigger. But once you get the biggest settings that you're capturing, no bigger than 5, and that's, like you said, very rare.
Yeah. So one thing I'll add to what Nathan said. So Nathan's one of our engineers on our team, he and Casey. His comment was that it's rare to see him that big as 5 meg. But what I will say is this, is when we did our early testing on this, we were creating templates, and we found that some of our templates continued to grow and got really big, not the templates, but the actual outcomes. And what happened is we were actually grabbing a file path that was grabbing the temporary files, and it kept getting exponentially large. So that's where you get into you need to be a little smart on how you do some of these things, because you can do that if you're grabbing those temp paths, and it will get bigger because we'll keep replicating the temporary files and they'll keep iterating. That's the only time I've seen a problem, but just kind of watch that as you go and generate. Okay, last question, then we're out of time, and I'll take others outside. Go ahead.
All right, yeah, thanks. I have just a couple quick questions. One, is it reading and writing to a local cache and then uploading to the store on the server, or is it communicating directly to the server?
It's actually simultaneously doing it. So it goes to the server, and then it'll write the changes back. So it's always trying to go to the server, and if it can't, it'll use the offline files, cache it locally, and then upload it later.
So if I'm just like unlocking the machine, which is normally an instantaneous operation, are there situations where a person's going to go unlock and it might stay there for a while it's trying to interact with the server?
The only time it will stay there a while is if I have turned off offline files and I've done sync method equals none. Mm-hmm. We've actually enabled a piece of the code. I actually had a problem in the demo, I don't know if you saw it, where it actually popped up a little warning saying it was taking too long. So UEV has a threshold that if it takes more than, I think it's 10 seconds to launch an app, because it'll hold that app launching until it can get the settings if I'm in sync method equals none. Again, only use that in VDI, but otherwise in offline mode, it'll try to hit the network, and if the network isn't there for some reason, offline files makes it feel like it is, it'll just start.
Okay, and last thing, sorry, are there any minimum requirements on the infrastructure side, like Active Directory, functional level, or anything like that?
No, it just looks for Active Directory, home directory. I have the .NET requirements, and then offline files. Those are your requirements.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions I'll take outside. We just need to clear out for the next presenter. Thank you.